Hello fight fans and welcome to Fight Scene. This is my YouTube channel where I go over upcoming MMA events and show you what they might look like in EA UFC 3. Today I want to talk a little bit about Romero versus Luke Rockhold, which is going down this Saturday at UFC 221. I have to admit, I've been procrastinating putting up this video for some time. I knew that I wanted to do prediction and analysis videos on this channel, and I wanted to try and get those predictions up as soon as possible just so that they were online for a long time for people to watch. But I've really been procrastinating putting up this video, and I can't really figure out what it is as to why I haven't put this up earlier. I think really it's that I have a lot of opinions on fights. I've been following the sport for a long time, and I always have a lot of opinions and love to talk about the fights. But for some reason, this matchup between Rockhold and Romero has sort of had me stumped, and for some reason, I just don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it or talking with other people about it. And so I've been kind of procrastinating because I wanted to put up prediction and analysis videos, but I also want to have a really informed opinion on those fights, and I haven't really been gathering my thoughts about what I think. So I did spend a little bit of time today just looking at the two fighters in a little bit more depth and coming up with what I think is a fairly solid prediction for what's going to happen in this fight. There's three things I want to talk about as it pertains to this middleweight interim championship fight between Rockhold and Romero. First, I want to talk about Luke Rockhold's jiu-jitsu. I would say that his jiu-jitsu is underrated, but at this point, it feels like the cat is out of the bag a little bit. People talk about his jiu-jitsu. If you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast, you heard Joe and John Danaher talk about Rockhold's jiu-jitsu. So it's not like it's this underrated, unknown thing anymore. He's displayed a wicked top game in the UFC, and people have a pretty good idea about the fact that he has really, really strong jiu-jitsu. What I do want to point out, though, is that sometimes people have gotten the misconception that wrestling sort of nullifies jiu-jitsu, and people also often think that jiu-jitsu is really just what you do when you're on your back. But the thing that everybody's been pointing out, and I'm just sort of beating a dead horse as to what's already been out there, is that Luke Rockhold's top game is very solid. He maintains position in a very, very solid way, and so it makes it really hard to advance or even get up, and he's able to do what he wants to you. And in the UFC, we've noticed, in MMA in general, we've noticed an evolution of jiu-jitsu where mainly in the past, it used to be something where you would attack with submissions off your back, or you would try and avoid taking damage, and you would try and get back to full guard where you would take the least amount of damage. And what's happened over time, and we've seen this in the competitive jiu-jitsu scene, is that MMA fighters who are really, really strong in jiu-jitsu use that ability to just get back on the feet as quickly as possible. And it's really become very difficult to keep fighters down in the UFC. Contrast that to 5 years ago when wrestlers were able to dominate by keeping people on the ground. Now it's quite, I wouldn't say easy for people to get up, but it's a lot more common to see fighters get up. Think about Michael Bisping. He's very, very difficult to keep down. And even GSP had a really, really hard time keeping him on his back. So when it comes to Luke Rockhold's jiu-jitsu, his top game is very strong. But the real question is whether or not he's going to be able to actually even get Romero on the ground. I was reading a little bit about Luke Rockhold as it pertains to his ground game, and because he doesn't come from a primarily wrestling base, and I stumbled across some interviews between Roger Gracie and Marcus Almeida Buchecha, and they spoke very highly of his jiu-jitsu game in total. I think it was Roger Gracie that said that he believed that if Luke really dedicated himself to just competitive jiu-jitsu, that he would actually win a world championship in his division. And so these are the world's I'm not sure foremost authority, but definitely the world's best jiu-jitsu players that are praising Rockhold for his ability on the mats. So I think that that's likely to play a significant factor in this fight. And the reason why I think it's going to play a significant factor is because of the second point I want to mention, which is Romero's cardio being a significant problem in this fight. The reality is that Romero is 40 years old, and while he is obviously a freak of nature and an incredible athlete, he does have a known cardio issue. We saw it in the Jacare fight. We saw it in the what's his name, Tim Kennedy fight. We've saw it in almost every fight except for the Weidman fight because he ended it by spectacular knockout. But Yoel has a cardio issue when it comes to the longer third and fourth rounds. This is a 5-round fight. It's for the interim title. And I think that Yoel Romero's cardio is going to play a significant factor in this fight. I don't think that Rockhold will try and take him down. I don't think Rockhold will try and wrestle him because in those early rounds, Yoel Romero is going to be quite strong. But as he becomes more tired, it's going to be a lot more likely that Rockhold will be able to implement that very, very strong top game and really pound out Yoel Romero, because he just won't be as athletic and explosive later in the fight. Again, he's 40 years old, and I don't want to criticize his cardio too much, but it's something that we've seen to be really the biggest weakness in this fighter's ability. His striking is pretty good, again, because he's so explosive, but I do give the edge to Luke Rockhold in the striking game, and so I kind of think really Rockhold can win on the feet. If he wants to keep it standing, he can definitely win there, and if he ends up taking down a tired Yoel Romero, then I think he wins there as well. What we really see as the most likely way that Yoel Romero can win is by being explosive early in the fight and taking Rockhold down. But even there, I don't think he would have a lot of success. The last thing that I want to talk about is Luke Rockhold's training partners, because if we look at the strength and area where Yoel will likely have the most success in this fight, which is the wrestling, if we look at Luke Rockhold's previous training camp, which was AKA, I mean, that camp has a stable of very, very, very strong wrestlers. They have world champions in Daniel Cormier and former world champions in Kane. And so Luke Rockhold is used to being pressured, and he's used to fighting off takedowns. And I think it was Cormier that said if it wasn't for the fact that Luke Rockhold is smaller than him, he would be able to really be strong in the wrestling department and be very competitive, even with Daniel Cormier, who's maybe the best wrestler that we've seen in MMA. I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration. I'm not sure. That's something I'm just sort of saying off the top of my head. But, I mean, no doubt, Daniel Cormier is a fantastic wrestler and has implemented it in such significant ways at the championship level. And even he is saying that Rockhold gives him a run for his money. So I think it's not very likely that we're going to see that Yoel Romero is going to give him a lot of trouble when it comes to wrestling. I think his experience fighting off Kane and his experience fighting off Daniel Cormier for all those years that he was at AKA are really going to be the significant turning point in this fight, because it's just going to continue to tire out Yoel Romero as the fight goes on and on and on. That is, if it even goes that far and Rockhold doesn't submit him in the earlier rounds. I don't think it's very likely that either fighter gets a knockout here. It's possible. I think it's more likely that Rockhold would get a submission in the 4th or 5th round, or that he would win by unanimous decision. But either way, I think that this fight, I don't want to say that it's very lopsided, but I do think there's a much more significant chance that Luke Rockhold is going to edge out and win the interim belt on Saturday night. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate you just tuning in to listen to what I have to say. It's just one fan's opinion on a fight. If you disagree with what I have to say, please let me know in the comments. I make these videos because I want to engage in discussion about the sport that I love and the sport that you love. And so please leave a comment so that we can talk about the fights. If you think that Yoel Romero is going to win, tell me in the comment section how you think he's going to win and what round you think he's going to win. I look forward to talking about this and finding out what happens on Saturday night. We'll see you next week.